London St Pancras, surely one of the great railway stations in the world, and the setting for the start of our journey today. This is a train sim scenario replicating the Project Rio trains from 20 years ago, which ran to Manchester Piccadilly at a time when the West Coast Main Line modernisation was in full swing. And this run via the Midland Main Line helped to fill in some gaps caused by the disruption. From the London suburbs, we'll travel alongside the M1 motorway and overtake even the fastest cars at ease, through the countryside of Hertfordshire and Leicestershire. Before entering the Peak District and the Hope Valley line. The magnificent Stockport viaduct signifies that we're on the closing stretch, before journey's end at Manchester Piccadilly, another amazing piece of railway architecture. So we'll get the train set up. It's rather a rainy day in London. I think it's going to be one of those showery days. We've still got just over a minute away from departure, 11 o'clock. And we are in the hands of a former Virgin cross-country high-speed train. Of course, you could tell that from the livery, and they were used on these services at this time, just over 20 years ago. And I've read a little bit about the drivers at that time, said that they were in rather a poor state, not quite optimum. There's the signal from the guard that we are ready to depart, so let's just reply back to him. I don't think the rain is going to persist for too long. I suspect it's going to be quite showery though during the whole journey. Of course, we're taking the Midland Main Line north. The HS1, the high-speed 1 line, veers away to our right to places such as Paris and Amsterdam, and also some Kent lines as well through Hertfordshire, Canterbury, Dover, Ramsgate. Has it stopped raining already? Yeah. Of course, past the cement works as well. That's a bit of the high speed 1 line just above us on the right. Terrific sound of the diesel engines as we accelerate away. Was another of the Virgin liveried high-speed trains. Of course, that one was predominantly with Midland Main Line liveried carriages. So today we'll be calling at Luton. That'll be our first stop. Then Wellingborough, Kettering, Market Harborough, Leicester, Stockport and Manchester Piccadilly. Better get those tail lights off as well, hadn't we? That should do it. Always try and keep the cursor down a little bit. Tend to forget, doesn't look very good watching it back. So we'll be soon getting 110 mile an hour. First question to answer really is, why on earth were these called Project Rio, these services? Well, you kind of think Brazilian magic. You were thinking of Rio de Janeiro, of course. Bit of samba. Well, nothing like that. It was all to do with Rio Ferdinand, of all people, because round about the time when this service was in operation, Rio Ferdinand made the move from Leeds United to Manchester United. Well, that got me thinking, do we actually encounter Yorkshire on this trip? Well, we're not far from it. We're only a few miles away from Sheffield, but by my reckoning, we don't quite reach Yorkshire. So it's a little bit of a play on events, I suppose, but we go through Topley Tunnel, we branch left and go over the Hope Valley at that point. See that later on in the journey, but we don't quite get into Yorkshire. We're just about to enter the M1 motorway. I was quite surprised to learn that the most southern section of the M1 from Staples Corner, which of course connects up with the North Circular. I'm sure many of you will have driven on that section over the years, and that section didn't open until 1977. The initial bit was 1959. We do pass London Gateway services as well in this section. Is this it on the right, I think? Formerly known as Scratchwood services. Surely that was a better name. Somewhere in this region anyway. We've left the M1 now at Elstree and Boreham Wood. It's home of the famous BBC studios, the former film studios, and not that I watch it, but I believe that's where they film EastEnders. those Class 319s in Thameslink livery at the time. Of course, you don't see 319s on the Midland Main Line nowadays. Quite a smart livery, I used to think. Massive credit to Clive Hurd for creating the route north of Bedford and creating this scenario as well, and I think it was one of his inspirations in terms of building the route from Bedford to Leicester, so that he could create this exact scenario and do the full run from St Pancras to Manchester Piccadilly. I'm still waiting for the day when we can do it via the West Coast Main Line. We can do Euston to Liverpool Lime Street, but not yet to Manchester Piccadilly. Was of note there that the signal was double yellow, it cleared to green, so clearly there's something slightly slower in front of us. We must keep an eye out for that. So it's kind of no point in massively accelerating through this section. Still got green for the moment. Didn't worry too much about the markers of the neutral sections driving a diesel train. So we do have a double yellow now. Ease through the brakes a little bit. So we've got a green again, but perhaps go to notch 2, and we don't want to kind of catch it too quickly, the train in front. Okay, you can see that went to green then. If we can see what it is. That won't be it. That's going on the slow lines. Maybe it's just a bit too far away. It could well be that we've had a train on the fast lines moving over to the down slow lines. That could make the path clear. This is my second attempt at this run. I had a go at doing this section the other night and too busy looking at Luton Airport Parkway and Luton Airport and the surrounding area. Far too late for the Luton stop. So we'll try and get it accurate this time. Well, I'm going to take it that the train in front that was slowing us down is clear now, because we seem to be getting a succession of greens. It's an old route now. From Dovetail Games. Didn't have a massive appeal about driving it when it was only St Pancras to Bedford, because it felt as though driving one of these services that you're only really just stretching the legs by the time you got to Bedford, and you couldn't do anything further north. So massive thanks to Clive for creating the section further north, and very well worth downloadable or downloading from the Steam Workshop. Came out round about September, I would say, last year, September, October 2023. It's pretty much the same scenery on this part. I think it's only when we get beyond Bedford that we'll see his efforts. We've got a pesky double yellow again now. This is Luton Airport Parkway. Of course, you can get a easy shuttle ride on the bus into the airport from the car park. It's not a bad way of getting to London as well. You don't want to be parking in central London if you're driving down the M1. Regular fast services. So we'll try and make the stop properly into Luton this time. Still entered it a bit too speedily, really. Not sure exactly textbook this, but we're okay. We've made it. And this is the difference really with having full route knowledge, because if you did, you would know exactly where to start braking. Not sure how that lady managed to walk through the gate. How are we doing for time, incidentally? We have got the timetable up here. Luton 11:25 book departure time, it says, so we've got a few seconds more yet. And the guard a bit impatient to get us away. So we'll wait till 11:25. We'll see if we can make it on time through to Wellingborough. I think this run is done at a time before the Meridian units that are in operation today. I still think of them basically as Voyagers, that not much different. We're in operation. It's essentially all HST, and of course north of Bedford will have no overhead catenary. Get electric services to Corby nowadays, and virtually it's electrified, not that far from Leicester actually. I'm not sure what the plans are in terms of full electrification to Leicester. Of course it's a bit easier now because they're planning on using the hybrid units, so they can use electric on the electric sections and diesel on the non-electrified sections. Won't be stopping at Bedford though. Wellingborough is our very next stop. believe there are 125-mile-an-hour sections now on the Midland Main Line. I know that when they were certainly first introduced in the 80s, at the time, it wasn't possible to actually get up to 125. I think 110 was the maximum on the Midland Main Line for many years. Just about old enough to remember the last days of the peaks, class 45s, 46s, places like Derby and Nottingham. And that was at the time when it felt like the high-speed train was very much the new kid on the block. And maybe that makes me just a bit old. Just one of those slightly pesky, showery days. Thankfully, with this Armstrong Powerhouse sound pack, we haven't got a squeaking windscreen wiper. Seems to be loads of tunnels on the Midland Main Line where you drop from 110 to 100. Not quite sure of the precise reasons why. Be interested to know if anybody knows the answer to that one, then pop it in the comments, or any other thoughts about this particular train ride. Love to be able to do it now. Of course, the normal services from Nottingham and Sheffield. I think there is still a Leeds to St Pancras service. Chasing a Thameslink service now. It's on the slow lines. I think at the time most of the services were Bedford to Brighton. Of course, they have far more destinations these days on Thameslink. Includes northbound places like Cambridge. There's a regular service. Luton is a starting point. St Albans, I think, as well. And then further south you've got Orpington, and Sutton, I think, is another destination as well. There's quite a range of trains on the Thameslink network nowadays. I think I've ridden this route far more times since we've had the extension through to Leicester. It just seemed pointless just going to Bedford. You couldn't quite get the excitement about taking it as far as Bedford on a supposedly Derby service, or a Sheffield or Nottingham. Here is the end of the catenary. This is Bedford. Can't lie, I was quite excited about being able to drive straight through Bedford the first time. You'll see that there's no drop in the standards of the scenery. Really is a very good job. Can't pretend I know every stretch of the line by any stretch of the imagination, but it looks pretty representative, I think. Looks as though it's brightening up again. We've got our first bit of freight action as well here. Good old Class 37 on the front. Pretty much apart from Leicester, which is a custom build off the Just Trains route. The stations in between here and Leicester aren't custom built, so nice if we could have those in the future. Still got a few pesky rain spots. Time to ease off the power again. There's quite a few videos that you can watch for free of this route on YouTube. A number of cab view rides. If we wanted to do a full run to Leeds on Train Simulator from St Pancras, the only bit that's really missing is Sheffield to Leeds. We've got Doncaster to Sheffield, courtesy of, there's a route on Alan Thompson's site which goes from Sheffield to Cleethorpes, and that includes that section, but we don't have the little bit of the route that misses Doncaster. Must be just slightly ahead of schedule, I suspect, here. Let's just check again. When are we due in at Wellingborough? 11:51, so we're 6 minutes and we're less than 3 miles away, so it's quite a leisurely run. I think they're an hourly service, this St Pancras to Manchester Piccadilly. Imagine in reality as a train driver you've just got to have that intense concentration, because you could be following a double yellow for miles and not kind of register in your brain that it's become a single yellow. I'm sure that's something they concentrate quite heavily in training. So maybe our train in front had a stop at Wellingborough and is perhaps still there, maybe. If we'd see it on the map. No, there's nothing this side of Wellingborough that I can see. Got a clear run into the station now. Finally, it stopped raining. So I think it was, did we say 11:51? There we are. Kettering is our next stop. That's a bit closer to. And again, we'll acknowledge the guard. I think in reality, though, in real life, he would be strictly adhering to the timetable. He wouldn't be giving the driver the right of way before the scheduled departure time. It's good to see just a little bit going on as well. In case you didn't think it was picking any mud out, well, it is. A scene of activity. Here's the rain again. You'll have observed then that it's basically a rake of ex-Virgin liveried Mark IIIs, but there is just the one buffet car in the old Midland Main Line livery. We're only literally 6 miles away from our next stop, Kettering. They're great units to drive still on Train Sim. I mean, I know the cab is quite old. I haven't purchased the new one from Alan Thompson Simulation yet, but I think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, in terms of long distance runs, it's perfectly plausible to do the full Dundee to Penzance working. Of course, nowadays it's Aberdeen to Penzance once a day, but can't quite get to Aberdeen yet on Train Simulator. We're missing the bit particularly from Montrose to Aberdeen. Never quite sure the exact percentage that you get one of those markers warning you of the reduction in speed. I think it's something like 20 miles an hour or maybe a bit more. Maybe 25. Slightly underdid the braking. You're always aware with the older units that when you apply the brakes, it takes a little bit of time for the brake pressure to come off, so not quite as instant as the modern units. Oh, didn't mean to do that. I don't think we'll be able to stop that from... Oh no, we're all right. We're okay. Not one of me better stops this. Kind of braked too hard, too quick. Emergency brakes came on. Anyway, here's Kettering. Pretty sure in reality it's got some very distinctive looking canopies. Nice to see a custom model built to this station and the other ones on this section. Yes, I think that kind of slow approach into Kettering means that we're still about on time, but we can go straight away this time. The majority of trains were under the train operating company Midland Main Line, as it was called then. Nowadays it's East Midland Railway. And it's perfectly possible to get a non-stop train just over an hour from St Pancras to Leicester. This is one of the slow ones, stopping all the major stops. Market Harborough is our next stop, which is then a pretty short hop to Leicester. Look at the attention to detail with those gardens though. You know, you've got all the clutter, then you've got an allotment over there, you've got offices, warehouses. Just really adds to the scenery. And you can see how far back it goes as well. Got an Aldi there. I think it was an Ardy as it's called in train simulator terms. Interested to know if there really is a Tesco exactly there. Stop raining again. When the high-speed trains were first built, it was just such an upgrade really in terms of both comfort and speed. Just an incredible asset to British Rail at the time. And of course, as I'm riding this, the last of the major HST runs ceased a few months ago in September of 2022 on the cross-country network. There's just a few now in short formation plying their trade on ScotRail services and in the southwest. think in the modern day environment they're very much, this is a section where the catenary has gone up. I seem to recall it's going to branch off and join up with the West Coast Main Line. Relatively sharp downhill gradient. Not gaining speed though. At the moment. I'm sure that'll change. Maybe. Clearly it's not quite sharp enough, the gradient. No idea whether it's accident or design. I wouldn't have thought it is particularly by design. It must be just the fact that the stations are on curves, but it's quite handy to get a significant reduction in speed not long before the station. Certainly gives you an advantage in terms of thinking about the fact that you've got to stop. Glide into Market Harborough. Clearly this is why we've got the 60-mile-an-hour speed restriction here around the bend. I think actually there's a new station being built now at Market Harborough. Passengers in Train Simulator always look as though they're walking on ice. Very peculiar. So when are we due off? 12:10, so we're again just slightly ahead of schedule. on the final stretch to Leicester on this lovely autumn day. We got something abandoned down there, I can see by the track. Oh, there you go. It's a shopping trolley. Or it might even be one of those parcel trolleys that you put your parcels on, but I love that. Again, it's just those little attention to detail, just a bit of clutter. You can see some oil drums around as well. Not sure in reality you'd put it straight into notch 5. Inevitably, the rain returns. I presume one driver would do the full run from St Pancras to Manchester Piccadilly. I think before we get to 85 we're going to be passing that 110 marker. Which you'll see on the track in a second. There it is. Of course, as per reality, you can't speed up to 110, or at least you can't go past the 85 mile an hour speed limit until the whole of the train has passed that marker. This has been a fairly slow run to Leicester really, but very enjoyable in the HST. Great sounds from the pack from Armstrong Powerhouse as well, makes it all the more enjoyable.
occasionally I press, I think it's F2 instead of F3. I think ironically, when this Project Rio service was in operation at the time, I wasn't even aware of it. I'd love to have done this run. But with the magical world of train simulator, then anything is possible. Sometimes it's possible to just ease off the power and you don't even have to bother to brake for these. Minor reduction in speed. I need somebody to tell me when it stopped raining. The canal alongside us. The graphics are fairly old on Train Simulator Classic these days, and of course it did come out something like 1997, so they're about to be a little bit on the old side. But on the plus side, you can do so many full runs now. There's the vast majority of the railway network already been created, so the possibilities are not quite endless. There are still quite a few gaps gradually being filled. There's still a bit of mileage in the old game yet. I think there's room for both at the moment. Train Sim World does have superior graphics in many ways. We're inside the last section now towards Leicester. You do need the Just Trains Midland Main Line add-on, which is Leicester to Nottingham and Sheffield, as well as the Hope Valley extension as well to take us to Stockport and Manchester. So we've got the flashing double yellow, so we know that we're going to have a diverging route ahead. So I'm a bit too quick on the reduction to 50 miles an hour. We are dropping down to 15 just before the station. What time are we due in at Leicester? 12. Well, it says 12:28, but I'm not sure if that's the departure time. We'll find out shortly. Signalled into platform 2. Speeding up then, shouldn't have done that. Slightly dark, the buildings at Leicester. I'm sure they didn't look like that the last time. Perhaps I need to re-download the pack. So this is technically part 2 because we're now using the Just Trains Midland Main Line route. You might notice a slight change in the track textures. It's a different track texture on the Just Trains route. Trains in the, I think it's the LIP yard, isn't it there? A couple of 150s and the EWS 37, it was a name one as well. And all that remains on the trip is to stop at Stockport and Manchester Piccadilly, but we'll be going via the lovely Hope Valley route through the heart of Derbyshire. Very scenic. I think out of all the payware providers that do routes for Train Simulator, I think Just Trains really have learned to set the standard with some fantastic custom builds. There's a real attention to detail with the bridges getting proper custom builds as well. Very much looking forward to the completion of the Buxton line, so we'll be able to extend out from Hazel Grove to Buxton and do a full Manchester Piccadilly to Buxton run. Hopefully that'll happen sometime this year. Next week, as I'm recording this, we've got the Wessex Main Line extension coming out to Salisbury. I think a lot of people excited about what the possibility is of Just Train's next Train Sim World route as well. They're not allowed to tell us what it is at the moment. It'll be some months away before we find that out. But hopefully now that they have the route building skills on Train Sim World, it'll be a little bit quicker than their previous incarnation without letting up on the quality. The two-part scenario downloaded from Alan Thompson simulation. I had to do a little bit of tinkering around with part 2 because by default it was loading up a Virgin liveried HST, and as soon as though we were non-Virgin liveried, haven't got the logo on is what I mean. For the first part, it didn't seem right to have the logo on for the second part, so I think I've got it right now. About 37 on the front of the freight train. Perhaps a bit too early for Class 66s. Loughborough, the famous brushworks. For the very first time in this entire journey, we've got a clearance for 125 mile an hour. Then the slowest section will be over the Hope Valley, actually. at least make sure we get up to 125 for a brief period, because we're dropping down to 110 again shortly. Of course, these trains were originally branded as Intercity 125. Back in the 1970s when they were first introduced. See the Radcliffe Power Station in the distance. Certainly anybody who's been on this train line or driven around these parts will be very familiar with that site. Dominates the landscape for many, many miles. East Midlands Parkway Station as well, and we're going over the River Trent, Trent Junction. And we've got to prepare to come down all the way down to 30 miles an hour. At the moment we're technically heading towards Nottingham, but we'll branch off to the left and the Erewash Valley line. That will mean that we avoid Derby. Churchyard at Towton. If you were doing a Nottingham to St Pancras service, it's perfectly possible to do the routes from Nottingham to Leicester on either Train Sim Classic or Train Sim World, and do the remainder in Train Sim Classic. We're still only 80 miles an hour on this section. Of course, not quite the same engines as originally built, but very much in memory of the childhood, really, with the HST, that sound as it swept past of the engine noise from the front, and then the one at the back as well. Of course, that's really why they were able to get the 125 power on a diesel train, having two powerful engines on front and back. Of course, by all means, if you have memories of travelling on the Project Rio trains 20 years or so ago now, then by all means pop it in the comments. A bit late with the 65 mile an hour drop of the speed limit. Just feels too slow, doesn't it, going 80 miles an hour with a HST? It like being in a fast car and being restricted to 50 miles an hour. They were made to run fast. We'll be rejoining the Sheffield Main Line. We will take in Chesterfield. I think some of the Project Rio trains might have stopped at Chesterfield. This one doesn't. It was one of the dilemmas when you're streaming a route, really, because you want to show off the lovely scenery, but you might miss things going on in the cab, the changes in the speed limit. There's still parts of this route I don't think I've explored properly yet. I don't think I've done a Manchester Piccadilly to Sheffield stopping train. Of course, those services don't stop at Stockport. They kind of turn out straight after Piccadilly station itself. I hesitate to say this is the most boring section of the route because it's nice scenery really, just not quite up to the rolling hills of the Peak District. Again, the real train driver, the route knowledge would be to the extent not just that they know all the signals, all the stations, all the landmarks, all the stopping points, but they know the gradients of the line as well, so they would know instinctively whether you were going to gain speed on a downhill gradient. You have to know all these kind of diversionary routes as well. You're not guided into where to stop usually. Times when there are approach control signals at stations, but usually it's down to route knowledge. And I think finally we are back on the Derby-Sheffield section now, so obviously we won't make it to Sheffield, but we're on the road to Chesterfield. This was the first section of line that Just Trains built when they built their Midland Main Line add-on. So we had Derby to Sheffield, then the Derwent Valley Line to Matlock. That's worth getting as well. It's a lovely little add-on. And then we added in Nottingham to Leicester, and then finally the Hope Valley bit, so including Sheffield to Manchester Piccadilly. Then, as I mentioned, after that we have the Buxton line coming out in 2024. You can see we're routed onto the down fast line. We are on the approach to Chesterfield now. We get the first view of the famous crooked spire at Chesterfield. Of course, they could probably correct it, but it's a tourist attraction in its own right. Of course, you couldn't just put a default building there in, could you? So I think it was kind of a defect with the original build, and it came out fairly soon afterwards, but then they realised, we can make money out of this, we can attract visitors to see our very famous and unusual crooked spire. And you mentioned Chesterfield, and it's probably one of those few pieces of trivia that people would instantly know about. I think Chesterfield FC is represented somewhere in there as well. FA Cup semi-finalists in 1997. Very nearly made it to the final that year, I remember. Okay, we'll stick to the trains. was this section of the line that I took in September to have a ride on one of the last cross-country HSTs. It was the last week of service between Derby and Leeds. Worth owning one of the Just Trains routes, really, just for the common library that you get with it. There's a great asset library of buildings, and they just add on massively to what Dovetail Games have produced. We have to be mindful here. Just over a mile, we're slowing down all the way down to 15 miles an hour, and that's when we take the Hope Valley line and we enter Topley Tunnel. Trying to get it just right. You don't want to be going at 15 mile an hour way before the marker. I think I'm just going to be slightly over, maybe. Oh no, we're all right. I'll take that. It was pretty well judged, even though if I say so myself. So the line to the right goes off to Sheffield. There you go. You see, congratulating myself on the 15 mile an hour, and then start speeding moments later. You've got Door and Totley Station just round the other side of this little triangle. Not sure if we can get sides of it, possibly we might do. Driven on that road a number of times that you can see there. That's No, we can't quite see it, but not sure if I was pointing the right way there when we were looking at the road, but never mind. Miles an hour is really tortuous, isn't it? Thankfully, we're cleared for 55 now. And if you're on a Transpennine service from Manchester Piccadilly through to Sheffield, then you're going to be in the hands of a Class 185 usually. Then you've got the 158 services going through to places like Norwich that frequent this line as well. This is a 1 in 100 climb, so almost struggling to get beyond 33 miles an hour. Train as heavy as this. We are building up speed. I think we're flattening out the curve a little bit, but no, we're still only just about struggling to get over 34. We're gaining a bit now. This is the long Topley Tunnel. Going through a long tunnel in this area reminds me of there was a sci-fi drama on ITV in the, I'm trying to think, was it early 90s, mid 90s? Maybe a bit before, well, a bit after perhaps. And it's centred around the Earth being hit by an asteroid somewhere, and they were on this train going from St Pancras to Sheffield, but they went through a long tunnel which was apparently just before Sheffield. Not sure where that was supposed to be. The other thing was, I mean, I think they spent millions on the budget and it was all very high production, but then they filmed it clearly on the West Coast Main Line, and I think Chesterfield was Stafford, and you could see the catenary in the section where they were supposedly approaching Sheffield, so it's all a bit dubious for a rail enthusiast. I don't know whether that was a slight, well, it was a slight glitch, wasn't it? A gap in the tunnel. I don't know if that's me with not having downloaded the latest version or something. Of course, the other Manchester to Sheffield route that used to exist, no longer now, of course, the old Woodhead route. Had a long tunnel through Woodhead. You can still drive that on Train Sim Classic. you think these tunnels are too dark and you can't see anything, well, I've listened to quite a few of the Dad Rail streams, which are always worth listening to, because of course he's a real train driver, and he says that's exactly what they're like. They are really dark, and the ones where you can see all the tunnel walls on these long tunnels is just unrealistic. And now we feel as though we're in the Peak District. Beautiful section of line. 1, 2 semaphore signals to boot. Great way of relaxing though, driving on a scenic route on Train Simulator. It's almost as though you could be there for real, taking in the beautiful scenery. Again, all these little stations modelled in great detail. I think we'll get above 90 mile an hour on this Hope Valley section. Not 100% sure of my facts, because sometimes you get these slightly varying speed limits. But I'm going to make the assumption that we can go the upper limit. that's the... Is that the Hope Cement Works in the distance? Of course, that's where the line gets its name from. A small place called Hope. There you see, I didn't notice the drop down to 75 miles an hour. Just a wonderful view ahead, isn't it? Never tire of scenery like this. Absolutely stunning. Well, it's not going to let up this rain, is it? Used to be quite straightforward in the scenario editor. You could switch the rain on or off, but with this Armstrong Powerhouse weather pack, if it's going to be changeable, it's going to be changeable. Doing the stopping service really just to try and learn the stations. There's another Project Rio service on its way to St Pancras. Don't think there's a downloadable southbound run Piccadilly all the way. Not too difficult to create a scenario on Train Sim Classic, but you need a bit of time and patience. I believe this section of the route from Manchester Piccadilly to Sheffield was built by, I don't know his real name, but he was known as Pennine Pacer, and he built a freeware version of the route from Manchester Piccadilly to Huddersfield. And we've also got on that bit Manchester Victoria to Huddersfield, but of course we've now got the Dovetail Games route that goes from Victoria to Leeds. If you want to do Manchester Piccadilly to Manchester Victoria, you need the Chap Moss line from Alan Thompson. That's got the Ordsall curve on. is the Manchester Airport to Manchester Piccadilly bit doing. Got no excuse for missing the 60-mile-an-hour reduction because we got the advance warning. And then we've got a 50. Seems senseless, doesn't it, having a 60 and then a few yards later the 50. Why don't they just do it as 50? I'm not sure of my exact bearings, but there is the avoiding line that avoids Stockport that takes in, I think it's New Mills, is it? Kind of something to be thinking about all the time. In theory we've got a 90-mile-an-hour section, but very quickly we're 75, then it's 90, then it's 80. You're not going to fall asleep driving this section of line. Got a steep downhill gradient as well to negotiate. We're only just about 10 miles away now from Stockport, then of course not too far away from our final destination. Again, you can sort of ease the accelerator up to the 80, because although it's 90, we're very quickly coming down to 80. It's dry in Manchester, we can buck the trend, of course. It's always raining in Manchester, allegedly. course, these very slight over speeding by a mile an hour or a couple of miles an hour, I'm sure in real life would be massively frowned on. Train driver, if you called in for tea and biscuits, I think it's a bit of a metaphorical expression. I don't think there's too much friendly banter going on with that. It means you've done something wrong. Yet another long tunnel. Skills it must have taken to build these lines through the heart of the Peak District. Of course, often in the days where we didn't have all the heavy plant machinery that could do it now. Die building these routes. Dangerous work. Yeah, just as relevant these routes today as they were when they were built, and you have to go back to the 1800s. We're less than 5 miles away from Stockport, so we're very shortly going to go through Hazel Grove, and that does feel like we're in the Manchester suburbs then. We'll gain the overhead lines again. Was any advance warning of the 45 there? I did say we got the 50 coming up the other side of Hazel Grove Station. So I think I'm right in saying that's the Buxton line that's sort of coming on our left there. And we might see the odd EMU on this section now into Manchester Piccadilly. There is a core electric service between Hazel Grove and Piccadilly. The hospital represented here. I think that's the hospital anyway. Now we've got a DMU service here. As far as Chinley. Didn't point out the tunnels at Chinley, did I? Slow to get down to 25. So we take in the Hazel Cord. Enjoying the West Coast Main Line proper. It's a bit stuttery, this section. In fact, the whole section to Manchester Piccadilly is a little bit prone to issues. I think I might save it actually at Stockport just to make sure. I don't want to find the train dumps on me, the game dumps on me, having driven so far. Here we are, the West Coast Main Line itself now. Desperately waiting for somebody to model the bit between Stockport and Stafford, really, via Macclesfield and Stoke. Again, you can see great details gone into this surrounding area. Somebody joked when this route first came out, very much looking forward to seeing Stockport. I'm not sure those words have been uttered too many times by people over the years. I'm hoping we should be on time, I would have thought. In fact, we're some 4 minutes early. Let's just press the save just in case. And hopefully at least we do get any issues. I'm hoping we don't. Somebody taking on a coffee there. And here's Stockport. Quite know what's going on with the light in there. It might just be the time of the day. There's the old multi-storey car park. Yeah, you see, we're booked time 13:47, so we might as well just hang on slightly here. And then a fairly innocuous building here, but it's the Hat Museum. Again, it's one of those sites you always notice when you're on the train. If you peer out on this side, then we've got the motorway. Across the famous viaduct. I think we're missing a couple of road signs here. I can't remember what that thing's called. Well, we're seconds away from departure. We do have a Class 158 coming in. I think at this time they were used on the Transpennine services, and that was the livery of the day. Remember, this is 2003. Needless to say, it's raining again. This might be a site that you've not given too much thought about, going between Stockport and Manchester, but Stockport Viaduct is absolutely magnificent. Quite an interesting travel lodge to stop at. Found a great one at Leeds last year overlooking the station. I've got a few pictures of that, a few videos from my railway compilation 2023. This building on the right just looks every bit a railway building, shrouded, obscured a little bit in trees these days. Got Heaton Chapel Station coming up. It's booking office above the road. Getting quite a fascinating little bit of railway between Stockport and Manchester Piccadilly. Now, Levenshulme Station. We've got the line coming in from Manchester Airport. And that Asda on the left. I was very keen when this route came out to make sure that they got the Asda in. It might sound daft, but it's just something you notice when you're on the train, and certainly on the cab ride videos as well I've seen over time. So just really adds to that bit of realism. Alongside depot, I'm not going to do an outside view here, because if there's one point the game might dump on you, it tends to be there. I hope when they bring out the Buxton extension that they might optimise this a little bit. This is probably the most stuttery part of the route. Not surprised, it seemed really. You've got, again, distinctive buildings down the left, and then you've got the route from Glossop and Hadfield coming in from our right. And again, you can gain access to the Sheffield line that way. Not totally sure if that northern livery is correct for the period. Now, do we have direct access into the station? Yep, looks as though we do. We're signalled into platform 7. Again, the famous Network Rail building on the right. I spy another HST on a Project Rio service as well. I think it was an hourly service in each direction. This is a really good model of the station as well, with all the concourse and all the detail. It's very bright and airy nowadays. You go back to the 1970s and this station, and I love too how they've got the suspended gantries as well. It kind of keeps the spirit of the station alive. Doesn't make it too overbearing. All these little attention to detail, all those signs with the luggage trolleys. Well, here we are. We've made it. Manchester Piccadilly. Who needs Michael Portillo? This has been a great British railway journey by any standards. Let's open the doors. The only thing that's missing in this bit is absolute teams of people. You've got all the making a very good job at this, aren't I? Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. Well, I hope very much you've enjoyed this train sim run from London St Pancras to Manchester Piccadilly, and if you've enjoyed it, then please, if you don't mind, press like and subscribe to the channel. Try and upload more content as time allows, but from now it's goodbye.